Let's start, however, in West Africa, where Ghana has discovered new mineral occurrences in base metals like lead, copper and zinc, according to the country's mineral commissions. However, the quantity of those minerals is yet to be ascertained for those discovered in Kwanta, in the northern parts of the Volta region. The Chief Executive Officer of the Minerals Commission, Benjamin Ari, said that the discoveries were made in 2010 under the Mining Sector Support Program funded by the European Union, and they were part of government efforts to diversify the country's mineral base and reduce the impact of price volatility of gold on the economy of Ghana as a whole. And to further reduce the effects of gold price volatility, the government in Ghana plans to increase the capacity of the gold refinery and to introduce a policy to use bauxite and iron ore resources to catalyze industrialization. Elsewhere, the Democratic Republic of Congo has postponed the ban on exports of raw and intermediate copper and cobalt until the end of 2013. Now, that's designed to give players in those sectors time to comply with new requirements requiring value addition of the product before it's exported in order to retain more of its value and, of course, more of the money in the DRC. The law was put in place in April this year, but miners are given until the end of the second quarter of the year to comply or clear out their stockpiles, a move termed as unrealistic since the country doesn't have the kind of intensive energy production and affordable energy production at that required for the move. Congo is just one of several emerging resource-rich nations that have sought to discourage the export of concentrates. That's the intermediate product that feeds smelters and refiners to shift production to higher value finished metals. Let's move on to agriculture now. World cereal production is set to reach new record levels in 2013, an increase of around 7 or so percentage points compared to last year. That's according to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. Now, that increase, with an expected 2.479 million tons of cereal produced worldwide, will replenish global inventories and should guarantee a modicum of price stability in 2013 through to 2014, according to a report by the Food and Agriculture Organization. Wheat output is forecast to grow by 6.8% to 704 million tons. Rice output is projected, provisionally, I should point out, to grow by 1.9% to 500 million tons. Now, overall, world production of coarse grains will grow by 9.7% from 2012, reaching 1,275 million tons. The report also forecasts, however, that imports of low-income food deficit countries will increase by 5% compared to 2012, with Egypt, Indonesia and Nigeria expanding the quantity imported more than others. That said, the FAO says that 34 countries will still require external assistance, and 27 of those, unfortunately, are right here in Africa. Now let's move on to aviation news. Ethiopian Airlines has built quite a reputation for quality and service. It's also famous for its wide network connecting Africa in and from every direction. However, its aviation academy is less well known. It does train pilots and cabin crew members from all over Africa. As CCTV's Gurum Chalan now reports, this could just be the secret behind the airline's success.
It's Africa's most profitable and most celebrated airline, with more than 6,000 workers in 75 destinations internationally. The Ethiopian flag carrier is no stranger to success. Behind this success is the continent's finest aviation academy, training pilots, cabin crew and ground technicians from all over Africa.
The training was going well and helped us to be strong. We were well prepared, and the instructors, they were very good. The ground and the flight instructors, they helped us a lot, and we've been in different situations.
In the training, we've been given all the facilities to do the training very well. We've been given all equipment. We've been doing it with good instructors.
The training provided here in the Ethiopian facility is world-class, and the methodology and equipment are also top of the range.
We're about to land in Beijing. We just came from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, by 737 Boeing. So, but don't get me wrong, this is just a simulator flight, and Ethiopian Airlines has a lot of them. Welcome to Beijing.
Theodros Balcha is the head of the ground technicians training facility. He says the high-tech training is not only helping the continent, but improving the industry's safety record something that is important in Africa.
Ethiopian Airlines is known for its best safety record. So this is in fact a result of the well-trained technicians who are doing the maintenance and well-trained pilots. And it's the concerted effort of the management by properly deploying this trained manpower. So this school has indeed been one of the most vital sections for the airline.
Africans from every corner of the continent are getting the lesson of being a wonderful pilot here in the Ethiopian Airlines Aviation Academy. And these young pilots are an example for the ever-emerging and growing African aviation industry. Grumjala, CCTV, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Now, of course, we should also point out that in the wake of the fire that has engulfed one of Ethiopian Airlines 787 aircraft, that, of course, has been put out at Heathrow, but Boeing shares are down by well over 6% in trading so far. Let's move on to South Africa. The biggest threat facing insurance companies around the world is the enormous deluge of new regulations that authorities around the planet are drafting. Now, while many African countries are not immediately or directly affected, it's only a matter of time until they are. CCTV's Angela Coppola explains why.
The other major risks are the macroeconomic environment and the low level of investment returns. These issues directly affect consumers in South Africa because they affect the insurance companies.
If you look on the life side, we've seen a level of lapsing and surrendering of policies before term. That's tending to reverse now, but certainly has been a problem in the last 2-3 years. On the non-life side, we're seeing a lot more selective insurance.
I need a safety net in case something happens to me and I don't have cash available. I always get direct deposit.
I've got comprehensive insurance on my car. I've insured my laptop because it's a work tool. I've insured my phone and my iPad because those things travel with me too.
That would be for main big things like my computer and my phone, and medical aid.
The depressed economic environment and low investment returns are seen in some quarters as a potential driver to what is known as mis-selling, or bringing business onto the books that may not be of the right quality.
There could be pressure to put profit on the books, put sales on the books, and to do that possibilities of mis-selling. Although in our environment it's very difficult to predict, I think treating customers fairly will be a deterrent to most of the bigger players.
It's a new world for life and short-term insurers and consumers in South Africa. Currency depreciation, increased cost of repairs and low investment returns are placing added pressure on insurers, especially when it comes to offering products that provide guaranteed returns. Consumers may benefit from increased competition, but there is a danger that insurers will start pressurizing their sales teams to bring new business onto the books. I'm Angelo Coppola for CCTV in Johannesburg.
Let's move on to North Africa now. Soaring tensions following the ouster of the Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi by that country's military may have put quite the damper on annual Ramadan festivities in the capital, Cairo. But in some parts of the Egyptian capital, some vendors are using the prevailing political mood to their advantage to sell dates named after prominent political figures linked to the political turmoil there. Here's a closer look at how those vendors are turning a satirical snack into quite the business.
It is a different setting for the Muslim holy month of Ramadan in Egypt, what with their needs surrounding the current political situation. Despite the fasting and the expected festivities, most people are still cautious.
There's none of the regular happiness of Ramadan this year. We used to go out to Hussein and Said Zainab districts so happily, and the kids used to go out, but now there's none of that. We are all scared of going out.
In the Cairo neighborhood of Saida Zainab, some vendors are lightening the mood, selling dates named after public figures linked to the ongoing political turmoil. Dates are full of sucrose and are closely associated with the holy month of Ramadan and are big business here. Al-Sisi dates named after General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi sell for 30 Egyptian pounds, while dates named after ousted leader Mohamed Morsi sell for 4 Egyptian pounds.
We decided to call the dates Al-Sisi because of what Al-Sisi did for the people. The decisions he took, annulling the constitution, removing Morsi. For all these reasons, he's loved by the people.
The dates are now an avenue of political catharsis, depending on the political leaning of the vendor and the customer. Most visible, however, is the subdued nature of the festivities this year.
There are much less dates this year. The suppliers last year used to bring more quantity. This year, half the suppliers didn't because of the revolution and the current situation.
No doubt most Egyptians will be hoping for a speedy resolution to the problems that have dogged their country so far. The rest, however, continue to try and eke out a living as best as they can. Peter Akaba, CCTV.
Now, CCTV's Yasser Kim has been keeping tabs on the economic and political developments in Egypt over the years. He joins us now live from the capital, Cairo. Yasser, first off, let's start with the hard numbers. $12 billion in pledged aid. How much of that has arrived in Egypt so far?
Around $8 billion. That's from the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. The Kuwaiti $4 billion are not there yet. The $8 billion are not just cash. Around $3 billion of them are petrol and gas worth of dollars. The rest are either interest-free deposits at the central bank or non-repayable loans or grants.
Indeed. Given, however, the fact that Egypt now has roughly 500,000 or so tons of wheat in its reserves at the moment, and the last time it was in the international market buying wheat was February, what are you likely to see the country going back to the international markets to get more of the grain?
It already did, actually. They have announced a purchase of 180,000 tons from the Ukraine and Romania, and they'll be back again to Russia with more. Egypt imports around 10 million tons per year. That's the biggest importer in the world. And this year, it has actually been absent from the market since February, like you said, and that's because the Egyptians are trying to concentrate more on increasing the local crop rather than importing, to try to lower expenditure. And if 10 million is the normal, they're planning to target an 8 to 8.5 million tons of imports 2013, 2014. So for now, they're moving to Russia. Maybe they will get the next shipment by August. That's the Ukrainian, Romanian, and the Russian by October.
Indeed. As you mentioned earlier, however, the aid from Saudi Arabia and the UAE is in cash and partly in kind. With respect to the kind part of it, which is essentially petroleum products, how far has that gone in alleviating the energy shortages that have been plaguing Egypt over the last couple of months?
Well, in both sides, whether the petrol or the cash, it has worked very well for the Egyptian government. If you talk about the petrol and gas, we have not seen any shortages in the fuel for cars or diesel or even electricity cutouts for the last 2 to 3 weeks. And that was something normal, that you get electricity cutouts every day, and you find queues of cars in front of petrol stations for the last month or so. It was a huge headache for Egyptians. And this has disappeared in the last 10 days, although because of the uprisings and all the political upheaval, people thought that there will be more shortages because of the supply would not reach the consumer. But it's the other way around, and it's obviously the effects have been felt very quickly on a positive side from the Arab financial aid.
Indeed. Final question to you, Yasser. This, of course, does venture into politics quite a bit. Despite the fact that its government had been essentially kicked out in a coup after 9/11, George W. Bush still managed to convince Congress to approve aid to Pakistan. Now, do Egyptian not legislators, but does the Egyptian interim government expect similar treatment from American legislators as well?
And it's getting that treatment. There was 6 F-16 planes that were supposed to be arriving to Egypt as a new deal that was signed before Morsi has stepped down. And there were doubts that this deal will go through, and it was announced today that it will go through, and the planes are on the way. The $1.5 billion of military aid that's promised to Egypt every year, the Obama administration said that they will suspend this amount, and then again there are now talk about keeping it as it is. For the United States, Egypt is an important ally in the region that can keep the balance within the area. Being neighboring Israel, it's important for the US to keep Egypt calm and balanced So it seems that the aid, whether financial or military, will continue from the U.S.
Indeed. We'll have to leave it there for the time being, though. Thank you very much for your insights. That's CCTV's Yasser Kim, live from the Egyptian capital of Cairo. Time for a short break on Africa Live. Here's what's coming up next. We'll be talking about boosting China-Africa trade and talking to Tony Elumelu, one of Africa's richest men and Chief Executive Officer of Air Holdings, on developing private sector partnerships.
BizAsia. Asia means business.
Welcome back. Now, as we mentioned earlier in the bulletin, world cereal output is set to reach new record levels in 2013, going up by about 7 or so percentage points compared to 2012. However, 34 countries around the world will still be food insecure, and 27 of those are right here in Africa. The question is, at this point, where are the bottlenecks in the market and how can we get this food aid where it's required? To answer those questions, are now joined live in London by CCTV's Miriam Bemard. Miriam, according to the FAO, tight supplies are lending quite a bit of support to global maize prices. Where is the constriction in supply and production?
Well, the new funding will certainly bring relief to foreign currency reserves in Egypt, for example. That's where we're seeing one of the main areas that's having a shortage of food as well, dangerously low by the end of June. And certainly that will help the country relieve some of the pressure there. This will help boost imports after the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization warned that basics like wheat supply, for example, in Egypt are falling quite quickly. Now, in fact, officials had estimated that Egypt has about 5 months worth of wheat stock. So certainly the FAO is making a big moment of noticing what's happening there, making sure that these needs are being met. The promised funding will help the shrinking foreign currency reserves, putting pressure on Egypt's food security, which is what we're seeing, and a fear of shortages. Now, analysts say that Egypt relies on about 400,000 tons of imported wheat, and the government has now invited tenders to import about 1/4 of that to avoid a shortage. And this is very much based on the FAO report.
Indeed. Of course, just last year, however, we saw wheat prices essentially, or rather wheat prices rising due to drought in the United States and Russia as well. The threat of export bans, of course, raging across all the headlines as well. So how is it we bounced back so quickly in 2013? What changed?
Well, all in all, you know, international prices of vital food sources like wheat have actually gone down slightly in June. But the FAO warns that this is in contrast to maize prices increasing with tight supplies. Now, the FAO report has helped provide a gauge on how instability and civil unrest in places like Egypt is affecting their food security. At the same time, it doesn't help that volatile commodity prices have also forced food companies to change how they do business by raising prices to what the market will bear. Now, this has already put the pressure on countries like Egypt, where price for many foods like vegetables, bread and cereals have doubled since last fall.
Finally, Miriam, the FAO's outlook on rice output fairly cautious in this particular report, citing the need to wait for data on production from July and August, especially in the Northern Hemisphere. What should we expect?
Well, world rice production, Rama, in for this year is forecast to go up by almost 2%, with strong gains in all regions except for Europe and North America. Now, the FAO will be monitoring any changes in July and August, important months for the development of the Northern Hemisphere main paddy crops. Now, the FAO also predicted a major boost in rice production from Thailand, as well as a possible record first season of harvest in Bangladesh and the Philippines, while Indonesia is also looking to a rise in output by about 4.4% above last year's supply.
Indeed. We'll have to leave it there for the time being, though. Thank you very much for that update. That's CCTV's Miriam Bemart live in London. Some fairly interesting data coming through from the FAO earlier today. Now, Nigeria and China have recently made moves to expand their ties and finalizing a $1.1 billion low-interest loan, which of course is needed for a lot of infrastructure investment in Africa's second largest economy, and that's for everything from airports to roads to hydroelectric power plants. The focus, however, is shifting from government-led investment to Chinese investment from the private sector and increased trade with Nigeria. Nigeria's business magnate Tony Elumelu was part of the official delegation to China during the recent official trip by the Nigerian head of state, Goodluck Jonathan. He spoke to CCTV about trade ties between these two economies.
Many significant deals were signed during your trip to China. What's your view on the development of bilateral trade? What do you think still needs to be done to promote trade between the two countries?
What we witnessed the past couple of days is very encouraging. For once, we're beginning to see more active participation of the Chinese private sector in Africa and Nigeria in particular. That is a departure from what we used to see or what we're used to in Africa by Chinese involvement, which is usually government of China driven. But now we're beginning to see the Chinese private sector becoming more actively involved. That is the kind of engagement we want to have.
What do you think are the major opportunities in investment and trade in Nigeria?
We have opportunity in the oil and gas sector, which goes beyond just extraction of natural resources to actually the processing of the natural resources into finished products. We have opportunities in agribusiness. And Africa has a huge population and growing population, a fertile market, and the arable land, water, everything that will make agribusiness do very well to feed Africa as a continent as well as export to the rest of the world. I actually believe that the world's food security challenge can be addressed by Africa through participation of the African business leaders and foreign business leaders who have the expertise in this area. There's also investment opportunities in hospitality in business, across Africa. There's an investment opportunity in the healthcare sector across Africa, and there's investment opportunity in the financial services sector across Africa. So there are quite many. Infrastructure, of course, as we said before, power is extremely important. Africa is actually, the GDP is growing very fast. Africa, and the operating environment is improving, and the governance standards in Africa is significantly improving. So this is time for the Chinese private sector to come on board.
What do you think are the difficulties that Chinese investors face when they invest in Africa?
You would always have certain challenges in business arena in trying to make investment decisions. But the key thing is ability to identify the right local partners that can help you overcome some of those challenges, and the ability also of companies to devise means of dealing with such institutional rigidities or voids.
Now, for decades, Cote d'Ivoire was considered a formidable economy on the African continent as a whole. That, of course, was before the political crisis. It led the country into war, and the government is yet to quite fully recover and get its economy back up to speed again. But since January 2013, over 900 companies have been created, and hundreds of investors from China, Europe, Turkey and Brazil have been making repeated visits to Cote d'Ivoire to explore possibilities of investing there. To showcase and promote business in the country, dozens of entrepreneurs took part in the third edition of the Cote d'Ivoire International Enterprises and Industries Fair, which is aimed at getting the public and the private sectors working for the benefit of the country's economy yet again. Here's a sample of their experiences.
I think that our economy is growing up because you see, since President Alassane began his is politics, about economics. Every enterprise in Côte d'Ivoire try to get on.
The economy is growing up now since 2 years after the war. The situation, I think, is very interesting. We can experience that everything will go freely, correctly.
The Ivorian economy is growing, unlike past years during which we experienced the crisis. But after the crisis, things start to go.
Right, now as usual, as we wrap up BizAfrica, quick run through the markets for you. Quite a bit of interesting trends coming through with the markets that we track here on BizAfrica. The All-Share Index over in Nigeria ending the day in the green, but only marginally so, up 0.14 percentage points. The JC All-Share Index in South Africa also up by 7/10. A real star performer today, however, was the 20-share index in Kenya, up 1.33%. Quite a bit of foreign money coming back into the market, hitting a 4-week high. The Kenyan shilling, however, relatively weak, still around those 5-month lows. Keep an eye on that currency as the end of the month approaches. Quite a bit of pressure usually comes in at that point in time. And of course, the Egyptian market today being a Friday was closed. That's business for you this week. Let's do this again on Monday. I'll see you then.